RBombard is in the house. Thanks for coming in, man.
My pleasure. How are you?
Everything's going pretty good. Let's jump right into it. We have had a whole lot of crazy weather as of late. And a lot of people who come to the Osari area, who are just coming on vacation, they don't understand our weather patterns. Like, they don't understand that the water's not always crystal clear blue and the skies aren't always devoid of rain. There's a whole section of the year that most people never get to experience. And that's where we're at right now as we're recording this. What's your average kind of week like?
Well, the thing about the Bomberos in Nosara, the fire department here in Nosara in Costa Rica, is that we have a lot of different emergencies than the average fire department does. So whether it be a hive of killer bees in your attic, or it could be a crocodile in your front porch, a snake in your cupboard. You know, we live in the jungle. It's part of life here. My least favorite, I'd have to say, is probably the skunks. I really don't like the skunks. But I do have to get them, and that's part of the job. So, snakes.
Have you found out any techniques to avoid getting skunked, per se, by the skunk?
Trash bags.
Trash bags.
I'll trash bags, tarps, everything, try and cover everything up in the direction that they're at, and just tackle them. Without hurting them, of course.
Right. So there's no hesitation when you got to get a skunk. It's get something big, cover it, and just go.
But this is what I will generally offer at the table when I come into an emergency with it skunk related. I will generally say it's best to talk to the refuge, put a trap in there, put the trap in a bag, so that when you arrive at the trap, it's skunking the bag. Because I guarantee your house is going to smell like a skunk bomb for at least a week after I'm done.
What do you do if you have a skunk in your house?
Personally, I would say call the refuge and have them put a trap. Or go to the Do It Center and buy a trap and put it out there, and then call us once you have it. We'll relocate it once it's in a trap, no problem whatsoever. Or the refuge can as well.
But so the trap, get a trap and then put a bag or tarp around the trap.
You put it inside of a bag so that when you arrive at the trap, you just close the bag and you leave with the skunk in the bag in the trap.
Gotcha.
And that way it can skunk itself all at once. Then you just open one end of the bag, open the trap while it's in the bag, and let the little critter run out.
And it can safely get to the refuge or a different location.
Exactly, and nobody gets damaged from it.
Okay, so what about, let's say there's a snake. And this has happened before. I don't know if it's poisonous, or if I don't have dogs, have small kids. What should we do if we come across a snake?
Well, here's the thing with snakes. There's 122 species of snakes in this country. Actually, I think there's 131 now. But don't quote me on that. Now, out of all the species of snakes, only 22 are venomous in this country. And where we live in this part of the country, there's only 4 species of snakes that are actually venomous and dangerous to people.
Okay, can you cite those off for us?
Rattlesnake, coral snake, slender hognose pit viper, and your sea snake.
Okay, rattlesnake people are familiar with coral snake for the most part. The last two, what colors are they in kind of?
Slender hognose pit viper is it's a pit viper. So if you can picture a rattlesnake, it's basically the same looking snake without a rattle. Just the colors. It's got a orange line down its spine with like a checkerboard pattern down the back.
And the fourth one that you mentioned?
And the sea snake is one that most people have seen. It's a yellow and black sea snake, yellow belly sea snake, and super venomous with no anti-venom.
Is there a particular time of year for these snakes?
No, not really. I'll find the coral snakes are more towards the rainy season, I'd have to say, just because the water's moving around. The rattlesnakes like the drier season. The sea snakes will come to the beach after a heavy swell. And the hognose pit viper, I've yet to run into one here.
So you hear the term fertile ants being thrown around a good bit. Talk us through that a little bit.
Fertile ants, or terciopelo, they are here in Costa Rica. However, they're not in this area here where we live.
So that could be the first big sigh of relief moment, because just talking about snakes for a lot of people put people on edge. But at the same time, we're in the jungle. We have snakes.
Well, and for the 3 main terrestrial species that we have here that are truly venomous, there's anti-venom in Nicoya. And you have plenty of time to get there.
All right, so talk us through that a little bit. When should you handle a snake yourself, and when should you pick up the phone and call you guys?
I'm going to say handle a snake when you have appropriate training and are 100% confident. If you're not those 2 things, call for help.
It seems to me the most dangerous part of this is we just go grab a machete and try to go deal with the snake, not really knowing what's going on.
Well, there's a lot of different sides to that. The main one is the fact that you're just destroying the ecosystem, and that's your main rat killer. Rat and bats, which both can cause plagues. Other side of that, if it is truly a venomous snake, they're much faster than you, and you take the chance of being bitten by that snake while you're trying to kill it. The majority of snake bites in this area are from people trying to kill them out in the field.
So it is. It sounds like it's that exact scenario. Going
Yes.
out with a machete, and turns out it can strike. It's faster, and
That's right.
so your advice, to put it succinctly, is if you don't know the snake, you're not trained in the snake business per se, pick up the phone and call you guys, and you're happy to deal with it.
At the very least, send us a photo.
That makes sense. So where would people send the photo? And just while we're on the subject, where would they call?
You could call our dispatch, which is 8709-0614. That's the direct line to our dispatch. And it's a cell phone, so you can send photos, you can send WhatsApp, you can do whatever you need to do in order to do that. I don't recommend using Facebook because we check it randomly. If it's an emergency, you need to call us right away. There's a number right there. Right behind you, Rich.
So we'll get it in the show notes, and we'll have your contact information publicized out there. And thanks for the tip on Facebook not being the best spot. It's commonplace for people in our area to go straight to one of the many social media sites and blast stuff out, and often it actually isn't the right course of action. So thank you for pointing that out. Now, you have a lot of things going on. You've always had a lot of things going on, but you have a ton of administration stuff going on, and you're making massive strides right now and lots of progress. So again, I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you, and I thank you. But what would you want people out there listening to this or seeing this? What would you want them to know as far as where you guys at? What do you still need? And then what steps have you made in recent weeks and months that you'd like to update the public on?
Well, the first and foremost thing that is most important and what is the highest level of attention for us is getting a monthly income, because we're only funded by donations at this point in time. In the future, when we're picked up by the government or whoever, yeah, it's not as big of a deal. But right now, paying for our fuel, paying to keep our chainsaws running, paying for everything that goes in. Nate, for example, we burned through a couple $1,000s in equipment and fuel. So you have to look at those types of things and realize that it just doesn't come from the air. So what we ask is the businesses and the people of stature here in this area, or anybody really, to help us by donating once a month.
Gotcha. So I'm going to backtrack to where you started with that, because people might not be aware. You do not have government funding. You are not covered in any way outside of donations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that's a fairly poignant point. Most people, I don't think, are aware of that, Ryan. Would you agree?
Yeah, the majority of people just assume that we're funded by the government because really we should be. The thing is here is the Bomberos de Nosara, an institution that has been formed. We were formed on a private level in order to be here because the government structure didn't really have the structure to have us here.
So walk us through that. When did that start?
I want to say 2008.
Okay, so, and you say on a private level, what does that mean? You and a couple guys got together?
We got together and we started fighting fires. We got donated some equipment, and from there we significantly grew every year because the amount of calls that we got significantly grew. The first year there was maybe 20 calls. The second year there was like 60.
So it seems like it's probably a combination of the town growing and also awareness growing, because I remember when this whole thing started and we'd be sitting in security meetings and trying to figure everything out between the Malbero security and how we can do all this stuff. It's just a bunch of ragtag volunteers doing the best they can. You guys had a couple higher profile saves, I guess I'd want to say, a couple years into this, and that's when I saw the awareness really start to spike up.
Yeah, we've had several wildfires that we've, in the 9 years or so we've been operating here, we have had countless large scale wildfires. And I think in all of those wildfires, we've only lost one bodega.
Wow, that's fantastic. And many kudos to you guys for the sleepless nights, and also the many volunteers who come out, because like you pointed out earlier, the one thing we can say about Nosara and the community here is when something goes down, a lot of people step up. And I think that gives a lot of us the confidence to live here or to invest here or to be a part of this community, even though we are out in the middle of nowhere, pretty much. And if it rains really hard and the tides are bad, we can kind of be on an island. But at the same time, you got a lot of energy from the bodies around here of people coming together.
That's right.
Now, it would be nice if it didn't take a wildfire or a flood or an act of God to make it happen. And I don't want that to come across the wrong way. People are involved in everything all the time. I'm just saying I've noticed for your particular industry, when something bad happens is when it really gets going. But when everything's hunky-dory, sometimes the interest level or the funding level or the participation might not be there so much. So how do we address that and fix it so that you have a constant supply of volunteers as opposed to just in really big events?
Well, here's the thing with the Bomberos, the fire department, is, we work a lot. There's a lot of calls. And, the majority of the calls I just go do myself because I'm there. I get the call directly, and it's just easier for me to go handle it. Most of them are snakes, too, so I don't mind that. And, or trees. But, the thing is we're getting to the point where we're so busy that I have to start forming duty schedules, and I have to have a core group of people that I can say, okay, it's your turn this week. And I can go home and I can actually relax knowing that my guys are going to be able to handle it without having to go and sleep with one eye open.
So how's that going? Like, talk us through where you're at.
We've got a training program that we're putting together to build the sustainability of the fire department as a professional level. A lot of that comes down to funding too, which is very difficult. But at the same time, we're powering through it. The hardest part here for us is the initial attack on building all this stuff because we do it with literally almost no money. So
that being said, do you think you're going to achieve your master vision after you have governmental funding?
Absolutely.
Okay, so basically we need that to happen. So we need to keep clanging and making enough noise to get this to fruition so that you have funding coming from there?
That's correct. Well, and I don't think we're that far away from that. A big part of that was us becoming a nonprofit association here in Costa Rica, which changed us from private to public.
I got you. So would to get the point across here, I'm asking you this question. Obviously, we're not going to stop supporting you. I'm just asking the question. So would business owners, would we be better suited to allocate those funds elsewhere because you have funding on the way? Or do we need to dive in and continue pouring the donations in until the funding gets here? Where's the balance on that?
We need to immediately start this. And there's about 10 businesses here in the area that have actually kept us alive. So, and I'll make sure to say thank you to them here in a little bit. But the idea is to fund us now so that we can become that institution that they want to be like, okay, well, you guys are awesome. We're just going to take you over now. And then when that day happens, then we go and we go to these businesses and say, hey, if you want to keep your money coming, you're welcome to, but you can drop it 50% or whatever. We're starting to generate our own money, so it's up to you on how much you want to donate at that point.
So what I'm hearing you say is that, hey, this will be a scaling process. Right now, you still desperately need the funding. Please don't forget about you and get ahead of ourselves. But when the day comes, you'll come back and let the businesses and people know, hey, we have this part covered now, we still need this, and it'll probably be a phasing out or a...
Well, that's the idea, but you got to realize there's still a volunteer fire department. We will never be fully funded. It will never be fully 100% funded by the government. It's just not ever going to happen.
Gotcha. So let's talk about that for a minute. What can your average person do? Maybe somebody listening to this that are just a general tourist. Maybe they want to give back. How do they do that? I guess is the first question. And the second thing is, what are things that you guys need that your average person could afford? Maybe people can't donate $5, $10, $15, $20,000, which would be great if we had more people who did.
Right.
But the reality is there's a lot more people out there who have $5, $10, $20 as opposed to the higher dollar amounts.
You can go to many of these local places around here, and the businesses around here, and donate. Go to, say, Surfing Nosara and be like, hey, I want to donate $50 to the fire department. Can you guys handle that for me? And I'm sure that they would have no issue with that.
Gotcha. So I'm just a tourist passing through town, but I realize it's a small town and they need help. I could drop $5, $10, $15, $20, $50 and that'll still get to you and it will benefit you.
Absolutely. Every penny counts. It could be $5 and it would still count.
I think a lot of people forget that, Ryan, is because that's something we get back. And plus, we always need funding for so many different things around town. It's a small town. We're growing. It's a wonderful place. And we're really happy to have all the visitors and for NOSAR to get on the map. We're starting to have doctors and bomberos and fire safety. And heavens knows, even security's, knock on wood, getting a little bit better. So we're getting there. It's starting to happen. But your average visitor doesn't know that $20, we really need it.
Well, if say there's 10,000 people that come through town in a year, which is probably a small number compared to what really comes through. Say each person gave us $1. It's $10,000.
So let's say that people don't want to donate money, because there are people who are uncomfortable with money because of a lot of philanthropic organizations. The money doesn't get to where it's supposed to go. What items could they donate? Because I would imagine you guys have core things that you use time in, time out that'll never go away. Like, what can someone go to the hardware store, pick up, and donate that would be well received? And
machetes, shovels, rakes, chainsaws, boots.
This is great.
Boots
Well, people can bring down boots. Talk us through that too. Like, what are items that people could bring down that would benefit you guys, and then the items that they can pick up, like you just said. We have machetes, shovels, rakes. Anything else that you want to throw in there?
Well, there's, we use a lot of chainsaws, chains. And if you don't feel comfortable just handing us money and you want to say, we want to donate this, we want to buy you some things, we want to find some things for you, you're welcome to contact us and we'll give you an Amazon list or whatever you want, and be like, hey, these are the things we need on Amazon, boots, jackets, and
are those being delivered here now? Because I know some Amazon gets some things in.
There's two sides of it. You can go Amazon Prime for some things that will be delivered straight to your box here, or we can have them sent to somebody we know in the States and have them carry it down.
So for a long time, we were just trying to get fire trucks. Where are we at today?
Well, today, a lot of it has to do with maintenance on our trucks to keep them alive. But we do have 2 trucks currently. We have a Ford F-750 pumper, which is a 1971. It's pretty old, but it runs in good condition. Large and partly by us constantly working on it and keeping it running. We have a 1978 Toyota Land Cruiser pickup, which is more of our forestal and rapid response vehicle. Both a lot of maintenance and constantly. I was underneath it today fixing the fuel line.
So you're saying that trucks from the 70s in Nosara need a lot of maintenance?
Yeah, the roads are pretty rough.
Pardon my bad joke. It's just funny. Whenever I say this all the time, when people ask me the negatives, I say, well, crime cars and electronics. And you guys are certainly caught up in the cars part. What's the forecast for those vehicles? They're working? Everything's okay? Do we need more? Are we good?
Everything's running good, but at some point we're going to have to rotate them to a newer version. The problem we have at this point is the vehicles themselves are amazing. They function. The functionality of the vehicles is perfect. However, they're so outdated, it's hard to keep them on the road. I'm constantly fabricating parts.
They just shot over your shoulder a second ago between both of the cars. Looking at the 78 right now. I love the garden hose.
Well, that's the old Ford the original truck that we used.
Oh shoot, that was like when you see Joe cruising around.
Yeah, that was our original truck that we used for many years in the very, very beginning, before we even had a real fire truck.
So, Ryan, talking about the trucks, what did you start with, and where are we at today, and what do you need for the future?
Well, we started with an old Ford F-250 that we threw a tank in the back and put it in like a Swiss version of a P-250 pump on it with garden hoses. And that was our first initial fire truck with a bunch of rakes and shovels and all that in there. And it got us through for the first few years, and we broke the back on that truck a few times and we fixed it. Again, maintenance, man. And the maintenance is tough here with these roads the way they are. And with the fire department, we end up in a lot of places that most people don't.
So are these 2-wheel drive cars, 4-wheel drive cars?
The Ford was 2-wheel drive, I believe. The pumper, our bigger truck, the 1971 F-750 Ford pumper, is a two-wheel drive as well, which is difficult in some situations.
When you guys are up the mountain, going down some of these hills, like it's got to be a little precarious.
Well, especially when you got 3,000 liters of water pushing behind you too.
And you got to get back up the hill and get to the next spot if the fire bends the wrong direction.
Exactly, you got to be able to move. So we again, maintenance. We have to keep our vehicles in good top running order. And thirdly, the first Ford, the 250, we phased out when we got the pumper, the F750. So now that we have that truck, we were good. And then what we did is we fabricated an old Toyota Land Cruiser HJ45 1978 and made a bed for it. We made everything and fabricated the whole truck together, lifted it. It's 4-wheel drive, and it's got a small water tank on it, but it will go anywhere.
So, changing subjects, when's the last time you either had to do a snake rescue or relocation or whatever term you use, and when's the last time you saw a crocodile?
Okay, I had a snake yesterday morning that was about a 3-meter boa in somebody's house. Pretty big.
It's not small.
Caught that one, relocated it, and then last crocodile was maybe a week ago, about 3.5 meters.
I'm petrified of crocodiles. I won't surf at the river mouth in the rainy season. I don't care how good the waves are. I'm just scared. Do you think that's unfounded fear, or is that fairly wise?
No, the crocodiles here are not humanized in any way, so they have a greater fear of us than we do of them.
We just hear in the media, like the story in Tamarindo, where you have people who've been feeding some of those crocodiles almost their whole life. They're used to seeing people. And then people are paddling across to go from Tamarindo up to Playa Grande. It doesn't seem like a good idea, and someone got hit not too terribly long ago. So it just seems like it's better just to not mess with them and stay away if at all possible. Whereas you, for your day job, go seek out the crocodiles. I remember a couple of years ago you swimming around through a ditch trying to find one and get them to move.
Well, it's not seeking them out. It's finding them in places that they're not supposed to be and having to relocate them. When you talk about the crocodile in the Tamarindo incident, for example, that's a humanized crocodile. Humanized means that it's had a lot of human contact and it's does no longer have the fear of humans. So that crocodile associated people with food. So yeah, every day it got fresh fish carcasses. So when you have a hungry crocodile and it's already coming towards you because it thinks it's going to get dinner, you don't have dinner for it, then you become part of the menu. Now the crocodiles we have here, the minute they see you, they are gone. They want nothing to do with you.
Well, what's scary for a chicken like myself, who again is petrified of crocodiles, is I remember in October a couple years ago, just right out here in Guiones, one cruising around, and I didn't like that very much. So I definitely feel better with you saying that they're not humanized yet and they want to get away from you. But at the same time, I don't want to be around them. What would you tell swimmers, surfers, time of year? Give us some advice from how to avoid crocodiles.
Well, stay out of the brackish water. Brackish water meaning the turning dark water coming out of the river mouths or currents. That's where you're going to find your sharks or crocodiles, because that's where the bait usually stands up. Also, just be vigilant. Pay attention to where you're at. Like I said, the crocodiles here, it's not that common to see one out there. Are they there? Sure. Do they go out in the ocean? Sometimes.
Is that mainly during times of flood or really heavy rains, you would say?
Well, when there's not a lot of food, or when there's a lot of water flooding, they may be relocating to other areas, sometimes up and down the coast.
So what do you do if you're out surfing and you happen to see a crocodile? What's the right thing to do?
Keep your distance. Just keep your distance from it. It'll probably do the same for you.
We had been told many, many times that if you see a shark, don't provoke the shark per se, but also don't turn and just freak out and run, because then it sees you more as prey and it's like, okay, I got to go explore this. I'm from Florida, so we see sharks all the time growing up. The biggest shark I've ever seen, I'll never forget it. I was obviously very scared, but I remember forcing myself to turn and paddle towards it as it came towards me. So I was way too far out. There was no way I could paddle fast and get away, and I didn't want it to see me or any reason to chase me any further. So I just paddled towards it, and it was hard to get my arms to do that, but I was trying to not become prey. Are crocodiles similar, or is it a little bit different?
Sure, absolutely. It goes back to like the dogs. If you run from a dog, the dog's going to run, chase you down, and bite you every single time.
Well, there you go. That's a much better analogy than my silly shark story. Dogs. That is exactly it. So you're saying that it's very similar to if you encounter an aggressive dog. Just face it, and you're better off. Than
Yell
if you
and
just
scream and run at it, and it'll take off every time.
All right. So same thing as bears and other things.
Lions, same thing.
That's actually really good advice. I'm glad we got to talking about that. It's a pertinent subject for, like I said, I'm the guy whenever I see like a big shark on the computer comes by or TV or any of these things, I'm knocking on wood praying to God, just please don't let me get hit by any of these things.
Well, I'm a spear fisherman, so I see them often.
So when you're out spearfishing, how often do you see sharks and other things that you might be scared of?
In the first years when I started coming here, they were pretty prevalent. And now I can count on one hand how many I see a year.
That's sad. That's very sad. As much as I don't want to see them,
I'm
still
seeing
want them out
more.
there.
I am seeing more nowadays than I was in the past years, but so the population is growing a little bit. But as far as like a surfer being worried about sharks, I'd be more worried about lightning.
Gotcha. Speaking of lightning, how often is that a call that you guys have to attend to?
With people,
Yep.
almost never. I can only think of one incident, and that was years ago.
I
Somebody was
remember the
on a
one
quad.
incident from up towards Oceana
Yeah, it
where
was
they
a
went and got under
A couple
the...
got on a quad and they got hit because they went too deep in a puddle. And but that's almost unheard of.
So the
hitting
lightning strike
transfer
hasn't been a big one. Shark attacks or croc attacks hasn't been an issue for you. Your biggest issues are...
My biggest issues from a standpoint are vehicle accidents. They happen all the time. Due to the nicer roads and people driving as fast as they possibly can make their motorcycle or car go. That's one of our biggest problems around here.
Let's talk about that for just a second, because we have more attention to our roads right now than we ever have, or at least in my time here. So are you sad about that, or are you glad about that?
I think it's a great idea. It's a great movement forward. But there's a transition of people that don't want it or don't understand it. And that's why there needs to be a little bit more awareness on the roads. You have people that are driving a motorcycle with a family of 4 on it, and that with no helmets or reflective gear or anything, and a motorcycle that barely runs, and then you have a Coca-Cola truck coming the other direction that takes up a little over half the road.
And we have a lot of sharp turns, a lot of bendy turns.
There's a lot of blind turns. So these are the type of things that happen all the time, and there needs to be a little bit more awareness.
Who, if I can ask this, who are the bigger culprits that you face? Would you say it's tourists who come down and drive like bats out of hell, or would you say it's locals who might not have a lot of experience driving and put 4 or 5 people on a motorcycle who don't have the money to afford a car, or is it just the general expat people who live here? Like, if you had to categorize it, what's our biggest challenge in getting people to not wreck?
Well, in the community we live in, it's a very big combination of all of them. There's a large amount of people that don't know how to drive or don't have a license because it's difficult to obtain here because we're far away from the main town, or they just didn't want to do it. Or, but knowing the rules of the road, I think, is a big part of it. You have a lot of expats that live here that feel like they live in Disneyland. And just
especially early in their lives here, because it's still, you don't have the police on every corner, and you don't have intersection that lights that have cameras and so forth that they might be accustomed to. So I think when they first get here, there's kind of a more liberated, and that reflection of their driving.
And then you have the tourism that will put their 10-year-old kid in the driver's seat and be like, yeah, we're in Costa Rica, go drive.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. The amount of golf carts and quads being driven by very young children, I think, is it's a concern that it's given us some alarm.
It's one thing to let your kid go around your block or whatever and learn to drive. I don't. It's not legal, but I don't think that's a big deal. Now, when it comes to driving on a national highway, I think there should be a little bit more of an eye on that, because people forget very, very quickly that this route right here, Route 160, is a national highway.
Hey, while we're on the subject, I'd love to point out, I really don't think any of the suppliers are people who rent out quads or golf carts are endorsing kids driving. I see on social media a lot of the time people real quick to throw these places under the bus. I honestly don't think anyone out there is saying, yeah, your kid can drive this. Anybody I know who's worked in that industry says they tell people it's very clear what the rules and regulations are for the vehicles. But people are going to do what they're going to do when they're on vacation.
Well, I agree with you absolutely, and I don't blame the rental companies. It's the actual families that do this, and maybe they come from an area in say Florida or wherever that they have a huge pasture and their kids are very accustomed to riding a quad, probably know better than most of the adults around here. But the fact of the matter is that by law they can't legally rent that to the kid. So the adult is going to go and say, oh, I'm going to rent 3 quads a day for these adults. And then when they're out doing their thing, then the kids are just like, yeah, go ahead. Here's the keys. Go take the quad around the block. You know how to do it. Which, again, around the block or in a finca, it's not a big deal. But when you talk in national highways where you have large vehicles all the time passing through and driving pretty fast sometimes, it's dangerous. It's very dangerous.
Let's take a moment here and give you the floor to explain where the Bomberos are at today, legally, and take this moment to get it all out there. Anything that you'd like for the public to know, because one of the biggest challenges about for any of us who serve in the community doing stuff is re-explaining yourself over and over and over again. So why don't we take this moment for you to put it out there, what you want people to know. And then in the future, if anybody ever has this question, this will be alive. We'll post this online and we'll have it out there. What would you like to say or get out there that you want all of us to know about?
Well, really, right now we're moving forward pretty rapidly. The fire department itself just became nonprofit, so we became nonprofit Costa Rica. We still have nonprofit status in the United States through Friends of Nosara.
All right, so we've got 501c3 status through Friends of Nosara,
That's correct.
But we also now have nonprofit status inside of Costa Rica.
That's correct.
As a resident, I could donate in Costa Rica. Our U.S. folks could do that as well.
That's right.
Quick question: European folks, where should they donate through?
That's up to them. They can go through either way. Whatever works best for their tax situation, because I'm not familiar with the European tax system. But maybe the U.S. would be the way to go for them. Maybe Costa Rica would. I don't know really what their accountant would say.
Either way, let's just hope they send money to you.
Yeah. So either way, it's still tax deductible. At least we can give them a nonprofit receipt from one or the other.
Gotcha. Congratulations on getting that status.
Thank you. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, it's not fun. We've done it a couple times. It's horrible.
It's a lot of work, but it's done. So it's moving forward, and we can have. It's a lot easier for the institutions in Costa Rica to be able to help us out now. For the people that live here that have permanent residency, if you would like to be a firefighter, you're welcome to join us.
Can you talk us through that? Because I think if people knew that was available to them, more people might be interested.
Well, I'm looking for people that live here permanently, that have at least residency permanente, and that way I can insure you. Because that's our biggest thing, is if I can't insure you, it's more of a danger for me to have you out there than it would be to not have you out there.
Okay.
I have 17 firefighters on my roster, and in reality, I have maybe 7 or 8 on a good day that actually have the heart and show up.
So it's a case scenario. You don't want the light volunteer. You want the people who can really get after this.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people that want to be firefighters and make the time to do it. And when I say make the time, yes, you have to work. You have to take care of your family. You have to do all these things. But you also have to make a little bit of a sacrifice to show up when we need you. Because I'm not going to call you in the middle at 4 a.m. just to say, hey, how you doing? If I'm calling at 4 a.m, that means, guess what? There's an emergency and I need your help because I am in danger.
So what you're saying is the volunteers that you're looking for and need to be a little bit higher level of dedication and ready to go any time of the day.
That's right.
And what would you say for your average person who says, all right, there's something big's going on, I can come out and do some raking or use the shovel a little bit? Do you want them to contact you?
Sure. There's a different level. What do you tell the
layperson per se?
There's a different level of that. Like when it comes to large forest fires or large scale events like that, there's always a group of people, an area for regular volunteers, that are supervised by professionals that understand the job. So that being said, in the event of, say, a large fire by the yoga spa, we would have our Facebook page called Fuego Alerts. You can contact us on that. You can contact our duty dispatch phone, and they'll coordinate. They'll send you to our coordinator at the time, who's in charge of the volunteers, that's setting up, the volunteer program and dispatching people to where they need to be. And those would be your best options. In the event of an emergency, it's always best to call us directly.
I got you. So there's a couple layers to it. In the event of an emergency or something big, all hands on deck, let's go. But they'll be led by other people that are part of the main crew that are trained and...
That's correct. There'll be a team leader for each group.
So, Ryan, how many people would you like to have, or what's the structure that you'd like to get to?
Okay, well, the future that I envision for the fire department would be to have 4 full-time firefighters, paid, insured, the whole bit, and the rest would be volunteer. And that way at any given time, there's 2 firefighters on duty that can handle any given call. And then should there be an event that 2 firefighters cannot handle, meaning like a structure fire or a large wildfire, etc., then we would call in the reinforcements, which would be standing by as a volunteer. So, and then farther down the future from that, I'd like it to be a paid call fire department where the volunteers get paid for the time they work. In the future, that's where I would hope it can turn into, because...
How far, at the risk of getting you to play psychic here for a second, how far away...
I have no idea.
Would you think? Well, is that a year? Is that 10? Is that 20? Or is that?
It could be a year. It could be 5. It could be 10. It could never happen. I'm hoping that it happens sooner than later, because it's really difficult to operate.
Sorry for interrupting. I'm putting myself in your shoes for a moment. You leave at all hours of the night. You've been clogging away 100% donation based. You're trying to form a crew that is a dedicated, top-notch service level crew, but at the same time, you have no resources to really make that happen outside of donations from the community. That's tough.
It's definitely much more difficult without the funding, but we still accomplish the same mission. In regards to the other fire departments, they're fully funded. They have brand new state-of-the-art equipment, and they have the top-notch training, to where we have the best training that we can get here, substandard equipment, and we still get the job done very well.
So I'm guessing that comes back to the quality of people that we have working here.
It does. It goes from basically being able to just flip a switch to turn on the lights, or having to start a fire. At the end of the day, you accomplish the same mission. Just one's a lot more difficult.
I appreciate your insight. We're definitely going to have you back. And we have a couple things to go over in the very near future. The lifeguard program, I want to commend you, thank you, pat you on the back, give you a hug, and say we needed it. And we needed it in the past, but we really need it for the future.
You're right. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. Anything you'd like to say as we wind this one up?
Just feel free to contact us. If you have anything you'd like to donate, or if you own a business here and you'd like to start a monthly donation, we really need it. Contact me directly. I'm sure that they'll put in the comments my contacts. Contact the fire department at any given time for any emergency you may have. 8709-0614. Again, it's a cell phone, so you can WhatsApp it, text it, whatever you want to do with it. But that's our direct line for help.
Fantastic. And remember, this high season, everybody, boots, shovels, rakes, machetes, all these types of things, they are very much needed. And although it is raining and wet and no one's thinking about fires right now, in just a couple months, everything's going to turn around and the dry season will be here.
Fires happen every day. I had one today.
Actually, you did. Well, I retract my statement that nobody's thinking about fires right now.
I am.
And I will turn that into everyone will be thinking about fires very soon.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy. Talk to you soon.